Money doesn't move randomly. It flows, and Rockefeller built the dam. Pause for a moment and think about that. In every age, people have worked, struggled, and sacrificed to earn money. But John D. Rockefeller saw something the rest of the world was blind to. He didn't chase money. He studied it, like a scientist studies the movement of water. In the late 1800s, America was boiling with opportunity. The railroads roared, cities rose, and the oil boom had just begun. Men with dirt on their hands and fire in their eyes rushed to drill the black gold from the ground. They believed oil itself was the treasure. But Rockefeller saw deeper. He realized the real power wasn't in the oil, it was in the movement of oil, in how it traveled, who refined it, who distributed it, and who controlled those invisible channels. He didn't want to own every well. He wanted to own every path the oil had to take to reach the world. That's where the dam was built, not to stop the river, but to guide it. And once Rockefeller controlled the river, every drop of oil, every cent of profit, every ounce of power flowed through him. He wasn't chasing fortune. He was engineering it. While others lived in chaos, Rockefeller created order. While others gambled on chance, he designed systems. And systems, not luck, made him the richest man in history. His empire wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, steady, and unstoppable. Like a current you can't see, but one that carries everything with it. And that's the hidden truth about money. It never stands still. It flows between hands, industries, and nations. The few who understand that flow don't just get rich. They become untouchable. Rockefeller mastered that art. He became the architect of wealth itself, not by chasing oil, but by controlling the system it passed through. The real question isn't how much he earned, it's how he designed a world where every dollar had to move through his dam, because once you control the flow, you control the world. Rockefeller didn't fight the market, he built it. While others were busy surviving, Rockefeller was designing. The oil industry in the 1860s was chaos. Wildcatters drilling wherever they could, prices swinging like a pendulum, and fortunes made and lost overnight. It was a gold rush with fire instead of gold. But amid that noise stood a man who hated chaos. Rockefeller believed disorder was the enemy of progress. He saw the waste, barrels leaking, prices collapsing, businessmen cutting each other's throats in blind competition. He called it economic war, and he had no interest in playing it. So he did something radical. He created peace, but peace under his rules. He started buying out his competitors, calmly, systematically, like a chess master removing pieces from the board. When others tried to fight, he offered them partnership instead. Some called it mercy. Others called it manipulation. But to Rockefeller, it was just structure, control over the uncontrollable. His company, Standard Oil, became the symbol of industrial order. It set prices, dictated terms, and decided who would thrive and who would vanish. And the world followed his lead because his system worked. Oil became predictable, profits became stable, investors trusted his rhythm. He didn't conquer the market through violence, he conquered it through discipline. That's the hidden genius of Rockefeller's empire. He didn't dominate people, he dominated systems. He didn't need to shout or threaten or destroy. He simply made the world operate according to his design. Control for Rockefeller wasn't about ego. It was about efficiency, power, and predictability, the foundations of true wealth. He realized something few men ever do. When you control the rules of the game, you never have to worry about the score. His competitors called him ruthless, his partners called him brilliant, but history calls him inevitable. Because while everyone else tried to win inside the market, Rockefeller quietly built the market itself. And that's the difference between being rich and being remembered. He moved slower, but further. In a world addicted to speed, John D. Rockefeller was the calmest man in the storm. While others rushed to strike oil, he stood still, watching. While they gambled on the next big field, he studied the entire map. He understood something timeless. Patience is not the absence of action. It's the mastery of timing. The oil rush was filled with noise, men shouting deals in crowded saloons, speculators betting fortunes overnight, pipelines being laid and ripped apart just as quickly. But Rockefeller wasn't in the business of excitement. He was in the business of endurance. He moved slowly, deliberately, calculating every decision as if each dollar carried a heartbeat. When oil prices crashed, others panicked. They sold, they argued, they fought to survive. Rockefeller, however, stayed silent. He watched the chaos unfold like a chess player watching pawns collide. And when the dust settled, he bought everything that was left standing. That was his true advantage, emotional control. He believed that markets punish the impulsive and reward the patient. So he waited. And when he moved like a glacier, unstoppable, precise, and devastatingly effective. In 1870, when others were counting their small wins, Rockefeller was laying the foundation for an empire that would outlast them all. He was building pipelines, not just of oil, but of inevitability. He wasn't playing for months or even years. He was thinking in decades. That's the power of patience. It looks like inaction to the restless, but to the wise, it's silent construction. Every moment Rockefeller waited, his competitors weakened. Every time they celebrated, he was preparing. And when opportunity finally came knocking, he didn't hesitate, because he had already done the waiting, the watching, the calculating. His wealth didn't grow by luck. It grew by discipline, the discipline to move only when the timing was perfect. And that's the hidden law of great fortune. The world doesn't reward the loudest voice or the fastest hand. It rewards the man who can stay calm while everyone else loses control. Rockefeller's patience wasn't passive. It was power disguised as silence. Because when you can wait longer than others can panic, you don't just win the game, you redefine it. Power isn't loud, it whispers in deals. History remembers Rockefeller as the oil king. But those who study his empire closely know that his true kingdom wasn't made of oil. It was made of relationships. Quiet, strategic, invisible relationships that rewired the American economy from within. While his competitors fought over wells and barrels, Rockefeller was shaking hands with the men who owned the railroads, the arteries that carried America's lifeblood. He understood that oil wasn't valuable unless it could move. So he didn't fight for control of the wells. He secured control of the rails. In hushed rooms and closed offices, Rockefeller met with bankers, financiers, and railroad barons. No headlines, no noise, just whispered agreements that would decide the future of industry. Every deal was a thread, and together, those threads formed a web so powerful that even governments couldn't escape it. He didn't just sell oil, he designed how oil moved, how it was priced, and who could access it. And he did it all without shouting, without demanding, without public drama. Power, to Rockefeller, was never about appearances. It was about leverage, the quiet ability to influence outcomes long before anyone realized a decision had been made. He gave the railroads stability, and in return, they gave him loyalty. He gave the banks growth, and they gave him protection. Every handshake was strategic. Every favor was an investment. By the time his rivals noticed, Rockefeller didn't just own the oil business, he owned the system that oil depended on. Behind every empire lies a network unseen by the public eye. A few signatures, a few handshakes, and the world starts moving in your direction. That was Rockefeller's brilliance. He didn't chase visibility, he chased influence. He once said little, smiled less, but controlled everything. That's the paradox of real power. It doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly, patiently, like gravity, unseen, but undeniable. And in that silence, Rockefeller proved a timeless truth. The men who build networks rule those who build products. Because true wealth isn't made in the markets everyone watches. It's built in the meetings no one sees. He didn't sell oil. He sold access. That's the secret the world never saw coming. John D. Rockefeller wasn't in the oil business. He was in the business of flow, the movement of value. Every barrel that left a well, every shipment that crossed a rail, every lamp that burned at night was part of his grand design. He didn't need to own the oil fields. He owned the path oil had to travel to reach the people, and once he controlled that path, he controlled everything that depended on it. It's one of the most powerful laws in economic history. The man who manages flow manages fortune. Rockefeller's system was so efficient, so calculated, that even his fiercest rivals had to go through him. They cursed him publicly, but they paid him privately. His pipelines and refineries became the arteries of the industrial world, and every drop of oil that moved through them fed his empire. He designed an economy where resistance was useless, because even his enemies benefited from his order. Chaos costs money. Rockefeller sold peace, and everyone, willingly or not, paid the price he asked for it. That's what made his dome, in ants, unshakable. It wasn't built on aggression. It was built on inevitability. He didn't block competition. He made competition irrelevant. He understood something profound. Control doesn't come from ownership alone. It comes from dependence. In the same way that rivers carve landscapes, Rockefeller carved the American economy. Every gallon of oil had to pass through his design, like water obeying gravity, and that gravity was him. It's the same pattern repeated across time: the internet, the banking system, the world of data and algorithms. The names change, the industries evolve, but the principle remains eternal. Those who create flow command power. Rockefeller mastered it before anyone else understood it. He turned oil into an ecosystem. And by the time the world realized what he had built, it was already flowing through his hands. Because true power isn't owning the river, it's designing where the river must go. He became hated, then respected. Few men in history have been loved and loathed with equal intensity. John D. Rockefeller, the man who controlled the flow of America's oil, became a symbol of greed in the public eye. Newspapers painted him as ruthless, competitors called him a tyrant, and ordinary citizens whispered that he had sold his soul for profit. But Rockefeller understood something most men never do. Perception is power. It doesn't matter how much wealth you command, how vast your empire, or how clever your strategy is. If the world hates you, your influence is fragile. So instead of arguing, fighting, or begging for approval, he chose a different path. He reinvented his legacy quietly, strategically, and forever. Philanthropy became his instrument. He funded universities that would educate generations. He invested in medical research that would save lives. He gave millions to libraries, schools, and foundations carefully designed, the story the world would remember. And it worked. The man who had once been seen as the world's most ruthless capitalist became a symbol of vision and generosity. Critics softened. Public opinion shifted. He didn't need to fight for respect. He engineered it. This was the final lesson in Rockefeller's mastery of strategy. Control isn't only about markets, money, or systems. It's about narrative. The true strategist doesn't fight reputation. He reinvents it. He knew that power without perception is fragile. A ruler without respect is a target. A genius without acknowledgement is invisible. Rockefeller's transformation was subtle, a quiet shift from fear to admiration. He didn't change his ambition or discipline. He changed how the world interpreted them. He turned greed into vision, dominance into influence, and public outrage into a story of legacy. And in that, we see the timeless truth of leadership. It's not enough to win battles, control flows, or build empires. To endure, you must also shape the story that follows you, before anyone else does. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember what you have. It remembers what it believes about you. He built something that outlived him. History often forgets that empires fall. But some leave a blueprint so precise, so well constructed, that even when the walls crumble, the principles survive. John D. Rockefeller understood this better than anyone. Standard Oil, his mighty empire, was eventually broken apart by law. The government stepped in, and on paper it seemed like his power had ended. Yet in reality, nothing had truly died. Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, the giants of modern energy, all rose from the fragments of his design. The system he built refused to die, because it wasn't just a company. It was a framework, a flow of influence, control, and strategy that generations would continue to follow. Rockefeller's brilliance wasn't in wealth, accumulation alone. It was in designing a replicable system, a map for how power moves, how markets bend, and how influence compounds over time. Control the supply, manage the flow, shape perception. These were the laws he encoded into the very structure of his empire. And the truth is, every business leader who studies wealth today is still tracing his paths. The lessons aren't in his bank account. They're in the architecture of his thinking. He didn't just create riches. He created a method. And that is the heart of his legacy. Immortality through design. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe for more timeless lessons on how power truly flows. Because understanding these principles isn't just history, it's a guide to seeing the hidden currents that shape every industry, every deal, and every fortune. Rockefeller's life shows us that wealth is transient, but the system of wealth is eternal. Build an empire of dollars, and it may crumble. Build an empire of flow, and it will echo through centuries. His genius wasn't in living large. It was in building a structure that lives on without him. A river so carefully guided that its course continues to shape the world long after its architect has gone. This is the lesson for anyone who seeks not just success, but endurance. Control the flow, influence perception, and design systems, and your impact will outlast your lifetime. Wealth never disappears. It just changes hands. Think about that for a moment. Every fortune you see, every empire rising and falling, is part of an invisible current. Money is never stagnant. It moves, it flows. And those who understand the current shape history itself. John D. Rockefeller understood this better than anyone. He didn't hoard oil. He didn't chase fame. He controlled the flow. He became the river through which wealth traveled, and by doing so, he didn't just create riches. He created inevitability. The world today still runs on systems like his, vast, invisible networks of influence, supply, and control. Banking, tech, energy. The names change, the industries evolve, but the rules are the same. The currents that Rockefeller once mastered continue to carry fortunes, decisions, and power, often without the public ever noticing. He once said, "The way to make money is to let it flow through you." It's not greed. It's understanding. It's designing a river that cannot be stopped. It's influence disguised as infrastructure. And here is the ultimate lesson. Wealth isn't about accumulation. It's about direction. It's about the ability to guide resources, people, and energy toward the outcomes you envision. The richest men in history weren't the loudest or the strongest. They were the architects of flow, quiet, patient, and unstoppable. Rockefeller's life reminds us that power is rarely visible, yet always present. Every handshake, every system, every decision is a channel through which influence travels. And if you can master that, you don't just build wealth, you build a legacy. So ask yourself, are you chasing money, or are you learning to become the river it travels through? If this story awakens something in you, subscribe now. Because understanding the flow of wealth, power, and influence is the first step toward mastering your own empire, a river that can carry your vision far beyond a single lifetime. Remember, fortunes pass from hand to hand, but the wisdom of flow lasts forever.